SpectreVision Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Hello everybody and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. I'm Jo Hickey Hall and this time I am joined by Robert in Slovakia. And Robert had been listening to the podcast for some time and got in touch with some of your own stories. So it's lovely to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
It really is lovely to be able to speak. And you had written to me, what really kind of stuck out in my mind was this idea of the magical grandpa. Would you like to start with that story, or any way you like, really, and explain what this was about?
Yes, I'll be glad to do that. So the thing is, it's kind of a story or experience that I was never able to define, but that is still on my mind somehow. And I felt like I didn't have enough closure for that. And about 2 years ago, I began to search for some answers or anything that could help me understand what happened. And that's also why I'm really glad to join you and have this discussion, because I'm still searching for some kind of a closure of sorts in that. So um, what happened is that I think I was in primary school, so around 7 years old. I was out with my parents on a walk on one weekend. I was suddenly outside, and we were on this trail. So I live close to the small Carpathian Mountains, near to the capital, Bratislava. And the Carpathian Mountains are kind of a lower hills with a forest on top and these vineyards on the slopes. And there's a lot of these old historical towns, winemaking towns in the vicinity. And we took a walk among the vineyards to the direction uphill to the forest with my parents from one of these towns. And as we were on that trail, so we were on this part of the trail where you would just take a turn to the right. You would have a part of the road that would be straight ahead, and then turn left. And on one side of this road there was a vineyard and some thorny bushes, and on the other side also some thorny bushes and an old family house. And as we were walking on this part of the road, there was this elderly man with a walking stick, large glasses, and this beret hat that came from the other side towards us. He seemed to be very jovial, kind of merry, elderly gentleman, and he began some sort of small talk with my parents. And I was a kid, so I was not really interested in what the adults at the time were talking about. So I just turned around just for a quick moment. It was a couple of seconds. I turned my head back, then turned around, and he was not there anymore. Um, and I was really surprised because there was nowhere that he would be able to go. So I asked my parents, well, where did this elderly man go? And they just smiled and said, well, he just went away. He just vanished. He was a magical grandpa, they said. And I remember at the time that seemed to me very strange, and partially, I have to admit, irritating, because my parents always talked to me in this sort of on sort of a partner level, so to say. So as with another adult, they never try to make it more, how sort of say, fairy tale-ish. They really went on for a rational conversation, very straight to the point. So this seemed out of the place to me at the time. And I just looked around. I remember that I just sort of ran around the vineyard, looked at each of the rows. He was nowhere to be seen. The house on the right was behind some thorny bushes. I believe I've also sent you the photos of the place. So it can clearly be seen there. It has an old rusty gate, and if he were to go there, he would have to take some minutes to go unlock the gate, go to the front door, get inside. You would be definitely able to hear that with the rust that was on the gate. And on the left, he was nowhere to be seen. He couldn't go behind me because that's where I was looking just a moment before that. And he would have to just take his walking stick and sprint fast to the direction where he came from to be able to go to the turn left that way. So there was really no possible way for him, also with his age and
Mhm.
seemingly condition, to just sprint away or go quickly somewhere. Um, and well, I couldn't do anything more in this situation, so I just let it go. But I was still thinking about it. And later on, after some years, I asked my mom about this whole situation. She couldn't provide me with anything more than it just happened. And then I remember when I was around 14, I brought it up again. And last time I opened that conversation about 2 years ago, or 1.5 years ago. At the time, I was living in Denmark, in Copenhagen. I came back home for Easter. And so I asked, so, well, as my parents, so do you remember this occasion that happened to us? Um, I was recently thinking about that. Please, do you remember anything about that? What happened? Where did he go? What do you think where he could go at the time? And they told me that they do remember that whole experience. They do remember him clearly as he was there. They remember talking to him. Obviously, they don't know what they were talking about because that was probably a small talk, not that easy to remember. But they told me, well, we have no idea where he went. We have no recollection whatsoever about that, even though I was really pressing on them at the time um, to explain me that, but they still do not have any explanation for that. And when I was talking to some other people about that, they suggested that it can be perhaps this sort of psychological effect that one has, that when there's a memory in your head, you probably don't remember that whole memory clearly, and you tend to sort of go back to that and sort of construct some other parts of that memory so it adds up to that. That's not the case here because I remember the whole situation clearly. I remember the time that was there between me turning back and turning to the stranger again. So I'm 100% sure it's not the case. Also, it's nothing like that would be some sort of lost memory back in my head that I would just forgot about and then came back to that and construct some parts of it later on. No, I remember that this memory didn't change over time. And I remember talking about that and thinking about it years afterwards, immediately. So it could not be that.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's one thing that I still have sort of in the back of my on my mind, and I'm still
Hmm.
searching for some kind of a closure. I remember that one of the first people that I talked to regarding this was this lady who, in our primary school, who took care of us after the curriculum, after the classes, before the parents would pick us from the school. And I also recently reached out to her. The thing is that she let us play or do whatever we wanted. She let us draw or do some sort of creative DIY things in
Yeah.
the class. But sometimes, and we at the times we sort of pushed her to that, um, because we really loved it. A part of our class would just gather around her, and she would be sitting with us, and she would encourage us to share some stories. And she was very open about it, and also told her own stories. And all of these stories were something that had to do with phenomenons or some experiences that we were not able uh, to fully grasp, to fully rationalize ourselves.
Mhm.
So people would share experiences which could be related to spirits or some other things. And I remember sharing my story with her. And at that time, she told us that, well, this area around the town, Svetijor or St. George, um, it has a specific energy to that. And that there are several such areas here in the Carpathian Mountains, in the Little Carpathians, this one also closer to capital, where some things might occur because they have a very specific energy to them.
Right.
And later on, quit. She quit a job in the teaching industry, and she was always working with sort of spiritual topics, and now she's working full on as for the in the realm of spirituality. She's also an author, and she told us at the time, well, these things happened there, and that also happened to me of sorts. And she told us about three different stories that I remembered. And this year, also partially because of me just looking for closure, I contacted her again um, on Facebook. And I also wanted to thank her for creating a safe space for us at the time, because it really meant a lot to me. And also, I spoke with some other classmates from that time. They also said that, well, yes, it really helped them, because it was sort of a very a safe space for us to talk about things and not to be judged at all, which I think was very, very important to me, and maybe also for some others who search for that in that specific age as well. So I reached out to her, said probably don't remember me because she had many kids to take care of, but this is me. I really thank you for that. Also, I'm still dealing with this experience of mine. I remember sharing that with you, and I remember you telling us about all these things that happened to you in that area. Uh, and I encouraged her to maybe have a little conversation. She told me that she clearly remembers me, and she said that she saw me as some kind of observer at the time, so not the one who would talk too much, but rather observe and kind of feel different things around me. She told me as well that she could not share at the time every story that she would have, because that could be frowned upon. Parents or her colleagues who could be a little bit against it. But she recalled some of those stories that I reminded her that I remembered in my head. So, for instance, she told me that when she was a little kid, she used to play at her grandparents' vineyards and garden in that area. And she told me that she had a gnome companion at the time. So there was
A,
this gnome,
a gnome
a
companion.
gnome, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
there was there, and she remembers it when she was a kid. This gnome, him, it was a male, I guess. And he was playing with her. Sometimes he could be sort of, how to say that, really capricious, and so full of this energy that was neither negative or positive, but very high energy. And there was also sort of a guardian for her. He would, for instance, not let her into dangerous places, into the stairs to the cellar, or when there were freshly sown plants in the garden, he would just prevent her from stepping onto them in order to do that. And she remembers to playing to playing hide and seek and try to catch him as well. And every time she came close to him, he would not allow her to touch him or to catch him, so he would disappear. So she told me that, and that the last time that she saw him was in a grape harvest when she was 13 years old. So that was one thing. Another thing is she claimed that she is partially clairvoyant, and that she had certain visions, and one of the visions was also in that area. So they're uphill, over the vineyard that they had. There was the chapel of Holy Mary,
Oh.
and she remembers going there with her grandma. And at once, she was there alone, and she had this vision of this female figure as if rising from the nature there and communicating with her somehow non-verbally, so maybe telepathically or so. And she said, well, she saw it. Well, if someone would be Christian, they could see it as a representation of Holy Mary. She recognized it more as sort of this representation of nature, of earth, and sort of a guardian. So that happened to her there, and also she had these. She recalled this time when she had friends, a family that was camping in that area by the forest, so between the vineyards and the forest, and some strange things which she didn't specify happened to them, and they didn't know what to do, didn't know how to explain that. So they went to the archives of the town, because they were advised to do so. And of course, the best archives in these small towns were usually with the church.
Mm.
Um, and there in the archives, they found these sort of stories from some older time, where people disappeared in the forest. And there was also the tale of a woman who was there with her child, that disappeared in one place of the forest, specific area. She came back to the town. She was very sad. Came to the priest. He told her, "Well, we have these kind of stories happening here. Maybe try to go there next year, in 1 year or so." And she came there, and she told me she didn't know exactly if it was exactly 1 year or 1 year and something. She came to that place 1 year afterwards, very same place. She found that child again, but the child did not seem to age a year and had no recollection of the whole year. So these sort of stories were there in the archives of the town. Um, nobody was really doing anything with them, but it all seemed to bring up more experiences, more stories to that area, the specific area, because nothing like that would be happening in the next town, in the next valley. Uh, all those things occurred in around this town, and so I'm not saying it's bringing me some closure for what happened to me, but it was something that also made me think a bit about the whole situation. But I'm still not able to fully understand what it was or who it was that was there, because yeah, it's hard
Wow.
for me to grasp the
Yeah.
if that person, if there was a person, if there was something else, what really happened, why my parents don't have any recollection despite actually talking to him. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so striking to me how, as a little boy, did you say you were about 7 then? How old were you when
it
that happened?
it could be around 7. I do not remember correctly, exactly, but it could be around 7.
About 7. What's really striking is how much it meant to you, actually. So, and I wondered whether you remember his presence initially
Mhm.
striking, or was it the fact that he disappeared? Was that what drew your attention? Can you remember at all? I know it's hard because it's a long time ago, but can you remember at all what it was like to initially see him?
Mhm. So yeah, I remember. But that's the thing that when I was younger, and I believe that's in general that sometimes kids have a better recollection of people's faces because they tend to recognize all the features very quickly. But to me, he seemed really as your stereotypical image of a grandpa. So I remembered him just like I remember my great grandfather who lived at the time. So yeah, but his presence, I I don't think I would remember that presence up until today if that wouldn't happen.
Hmm.
Of course, because you do not remember every single person that talks to your
Yeah.
parents at this time when you are a child. But um, what I remember is this sort of very jovial and positive manner, this sort of very positive energy that went from him. I remember that he was, I think he was smiling or something like that when he came to us. Maybe not smiling, but I really remember that it was very positive. There's something very positive around him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And did you describe how he looked? Can you remember how he
Yeah.
looked?
Yes, so he had this brownish clothes. It was, I think it was early spring, so he had sort of a coat thing. All the clothes were brownish. He had these thick glasses. He had a walking stick and a beret hat on him. Um, yeah.
Mm. And were they clothes that were perhaps, you could see as kind of more modern clothes, as in his era when he would have been perhaps middle-aged or something like that, those sorts of clothes.
Yes, that sort of material, because it was that sort of material that people would wear. I don't know, he could probably be young in his 19 in the 1950s or so, so it could be from that era. I
Hmm.
also remember he had no beard or whatsoever, just white hair,
Right.
shorter white hair, no no facial hair at all,
Hmm.
just cleanly shaved. Um, that's as far as I remember.
And do you remember how it felt for you to be in his presence when he arrived?
So I thought that he had this very positive thing and smiling and so on because he saw a kid just like me. It was something that I had with my grandparents as well. So sometimes the elderly people also where I used to live, when they saw some kind of a kid or something, they would just strike up a conversation or something like that because they seem to be happy to find some children because they seem adorable and whatsoever. So I had this energy, so it was for me sort of this feeling that okay, here's an elderly man, probably he's happy to see another child or something. And so
Hmm.
yeah, I remember that. I remembered him being very this jovial, as I said, very merry. Uh, but he didn't talk to me despite just greeting. He went straight on to talking to my parents.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And do you remember how your parents were with him? Were they sort of just chatting to him normally? How did they receive him?
Normally, so in a polite manner. I don't think there were any. Um, I didn't pay that much attention to them at this time because we were talking the whole way up. So I didn't pay that much attention, as I said to them. They just talked to him in a polite manner, as if to anyone who would just try to some of kind of a small talk with them.
Yeah. So you're behind and they're walking in front, and somehow he joins them, and then you kind of turn around, and that's when
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, very interesting. So when he disappeared,
Hmm.
um, and you asked your parents, what kind of sense did you get from them? Was it quite an open response from them, or?
I remember that they were smiling, and they probably found it a little bit funny. It seemed to be that they found the whole they were really in a good manner, and in a good mood, in a
Mm.
happy mood, and also they responded not seriously at all. They responded with a smile. But I also have to say that sometimes they would use this phrase, a fairy grandpa or fairy tale grandpa or the magical grandpa, to some other people as well, but not to describe them wholly. But we would be somewhere on a trip, or yeah, somewhere in some place, and there would be some elderly gentleman with this very kind of stereotypical presence. Let's say, oh yeah, he's a fairy tale grandpa. It could also be connected to the thing that we had this sort of animated cartoon fairy tale that was on TV since, I believe it was even since the totalitarian regime that was here in the 90 so since the 80s. This show was going on, and after the Velvet Revolution in '89, it still went on with this cartoon, and it was playing in the evening for the kids. And there were different sort of cartoons, but always they began with uh, with this elderly grandpa that would come out of his cottage with a dog, and just take a kind of a lighter, and light up the stars on the
Oh,
sky. It was very cute, and it's
right.
very, very sort of a well-known cultural thing here. And they would respond to someone who would look like that, by describing him as a magical grandpa. If there was some very wholesome gentleman or very nice elderly man who would be sitting somewhere, or looking very, like, very unique with his presence, oh, he looks like a magical grandpa. And
Mm.
they also describe this one as such, and it was also with this kind of playful mood, in a playful manner, that it was, what, it was a magical grandpa. And it struck me as odd, at the situation. um it wouldn't, if that wouldn't happen, and if we would just walk past by him, just greeted him, and went on. If they would use the phrase then, um I wouldn't mind, because that would be a normal thing for them to do. But trying to explain to me why something happened that I couldn't understand with that phrase, that was what seemed to be completely off to me.
Mhm.
So the usage of that in that specific situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then they didn't give you a kind of a satisfying answer around, why he had disappeared. And I know you said you then spoke to them later. And I'm wondering also whether anything happened at the time in your family, for you all to come into contact with this, it sounds like an archetypal kind of wise man, or an, archetypal old man. Um, and for him to disappear. I just wonder whether, the elderly members of your family, did any of them pass around that time, or is there anything that happened in the family, like a move or some other kind of shift in situation?
Yeah, well, that was before we moved, because we moved a bit afterwards. Also, I remember, I told you another story in the email. I've written to you another story about something that happened when we were moving. But at this time, yes, around this time, well, I've mentioned him in a little while before, a little while ago. My great grandfather
Yeah.
died, so he was my mom's grandfather. He, yes, I have to admit, he looked a little similar to this gentleman, and he also wore very similar clothes. But I never connected to him, and I was never thinking about him at the same time. But I have to say, I am not sure if he passed away before or after this happens, but it was around that time.
Right.
It's more difficult for me to define the date and how it went
Yeah.
time wise. But I remember that my mom took it very, very difficult. His passing, I mean.
Yeah.
Um, but I believe she would feel that presence a bit more intense at this time if it was connected.
Yeah.
She had a close relationship with him,
Hmm.
and she still is very open about her feelings, how she feels stuff, how she recognizes emotions, and so on. So I believe, even right now, opening up the topic, that she would share a sort of thing, because she also shared some other stories that she had, but despite of the physical sort of similarities, I'm not sure if that could be fully compared. But that's a really good question, Joe, and I have to say I didn't think about it this way. So yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered if whether it was him coming to say goodbye or something like that
Mm,
before he died, because sometimes, especially if people are ill leading up to it or incapacitated in some way or unable to express what they would truly like to before they
mm,
pass, then sometimes it can happen that way that you know they are able to meet that need or complete that um, communication or sense of connection, in a non-physical way before they
mm.
pass. So it's just one thing to think about, that
Yeah.
maybe you could ask your mum about that and see what she thinks about that, whether it's possible that this being that you saw arrived shortly before his passing,
Mm,
and what that might have meant to her. Um, and then afterwards, you said when you brought it up at later stages in your life, she was unable to kind of recall his kind of disappearing the way that you had, and so it could be, there could be reasons for that, particularly if she
mm.
was very distraught at her grandfather's passing. But maybe you could light a little candle for your great granddad
Mm.
and ask him to lead you in the right way
Yeah.
to where you need to be to find out this trail. Maybe he is that magical grandpa after all, and he's gonna maybe there's something you need to do.
Yeah, there's definitely something that I will be thinking about. I haven't visited his grave this year, so probably next time, because it's in another town. But we wanted to go there with my mom for some months, so we'll probably take some time to do that there. But yeah, now that I think of it, but I still find it interesting that her having to work through that time and through that loss, she was not that impacted by the encounter with the magical grandpa there. So, and I thought that if she had this kind of a bond with my great grandfather, she would be moved somehow, or she would have some emotion that she would have from there that she would communicate. But she seemed to not have any emotions whatsoever, neither did my father. But they would probably even forget about this thing if I would not be constantly reminding them and looking for the closure. So yeah, but it could be what happened in that moment, what happened to Darren, and probably she forgot as as well. She forgot about the whole conversation with him. So maybe it was something that happened, brought her closure, then forgot about it right afterwards. I don't know.
But it could
I
be
don't
that
know.
he appeared before your great grandfather died.
Oh yeah, well yeah, well, now that yeah, you've also said that, so
Yeah.
that could be that as
But
well.
they do remember speaking with him at the time. They remember speaking, so he was sort of physically there.
Mm,
Yeah, have a chat with her and see, because you might have a sense that, oh, she wasn't moved by that. Maybe if you talk to her again, we never really know because people respond in different ways. We never really know how things impact people,
mm,
because they don't often show it. Sometimes they don't show it, they don't talk about it, but it might just open a conversation with her, and you might find that she is able to talk to it
yeah.
in a deeper way in some way. So just see. The thing that's really, as I say, kind of striking to me is how much it meant to you. And you talk about these archives sound fascinating. And, I'm just wondering whether that's something that you might take on as a project, or, to follow up those archives yourself, because in this town, there may or may not be people that would be as interested as we would. And I'm sure anyone that's watching
Mm,
this would also be like, oh, I'd love to have a look at those archives. For you, it's extra meaningful because, you have a connection with this place, you recognize the magical qualities of this landscape, and you're still looking for answers.
mm,
And it's not as if we're talking about, when I say answers, it's not like there's an answer to something and you can tick it off and say, there we go, I know all about this now, in this rational world where we have a habit of wanting to, get underneath something and know something in order to be able to have a sense of ease with it sometimes.
mm,
When I'm saying looking for answers, it may, perhaps the word is looking for meaning. And so if you start to look into the archives, you might find other stories that just kind of have a similar sense of presence to the story that you experienced. And it just might kind of feel satisfying in some way to do that. So, yeah, perhaps there are other stories that need to be heard, or at
mm.
least to be acknowledged. So, I don't know, would you think about possibly, having a look at the archives yourself?
I never thought about it, about physically going to the church archives or something like that. There, I did some very quick search, I have to say, on the internet, uh, with no specific results, no relevant results at least. Um, but I would have to think about how that can be done, because I'm not sure she, well, the lady that from the primary school,
Mm.
if she knew exactly how her friends went on to get there. But I can definitely contact her and ask again. So if she can find some way for me to know how I can do that, because I'm not sure uh, where to go or what to do. So
Yeah.
I'll have to look a bit into it.
Yeah, I think do you know what? It feels to me like it's one of those things that if you start to scratch the surface, you might find that doors will open, and that,
Mm,
you'll meet somebody that will say, oh, have a look at this section, or, it's one of those situations where if you start to go towards it, you'll find that doors will open. And it's not a kind of rational thing so that you can know ahead of time, oh, I need to look for this specific thing. It's more like going towards something, and if it
mm,
feels like, oh yeah, I'm really suddenly, I have a few days unexpected, I have a few days off to look at this or something like that. And if you're going
yeah.
towards it and then you happen to get there and you happen to bump into somebody that, would be the exact person that you'd need to speak to at that particular place, and they're able to show you some things. It's one of those things, if doors keep opening and it feels good to you, go in that direction. if you're coming
Mhm.
towards it and you're feeling like, oh no, I'm not sure this is for me, or or you're not drawn to do it, then don't worry. But just as a kind of, just as a, yeah, an idea of one way in which to kind of seek meaning in all of this. It's just
Mhm.
one opportunity. But also the woman that you had, looking after you at school sounds just uh yeah, I wish we had more people like that. I think there are these wonderful people that do work with children in sort of hidden
Mhm.
ways, and sometimes they might not be the teacher and they might not be the official caregivers, but there might be somebody there that is kind and open, and just that contact that you had with her has made a difference to your life. So it's really heartwarming to hear that. And I love the story you mentioned, and when you wrote it to me as well, about, I think in the email you were talking about the I didn't realize it was near a church, but in the email you'd mentioned that she was kind of lying in a meadow, and
Mhm.
that then she kind of felt the earth rise up in the form of a
Yeah,
female figure.
figure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just, I mean, that's really amazing. And yeah, I do. Many years ago, I was at a dolmen, and I was not very familiar with it at that time. I had been going there, but I feel like it was one of the first times I'd been there. And, or at least one of the first times I'd been there on my own. And I have a feeling that it was spring equinox,
Mhm.
because we used to go and visit a dolmen called Hugby in Jersey, where you could actually go inside the mound. It was one of
Mhm.
the Neolithic chambers that still had a mound atop, and you could book with the Hugby to go in and to watch the sun rise on spring equinox. And sometimes I didn't get around to booking it in time, and it would be full, so I couldn't go, whatever. Um, and I believe that this was one of the times that I couldn't go. And so I went to another dolmen, which was on the same alignment.
Mhm.
Um, and while I was there early morning, I had a vision of this young woman, well, a young woman, she was a girl, really,
Mhm.
maybe like a sort of 13-year-old, something like that. So not a fully grown woman yet,
Mhm.
but also not a little child, but something in
Mhm.
between. She was dancing around the edge, around the circle of the dolmen. So I was sitting in the chamber, and just meditating, and I was aware of her in a white dress
Mhm.
dancing lightly around the edge. I spoke to Amanda Radcliffe about this, because she had experienced seeing the White Lady. And I'd never thought of this being as a white lady until I spoke to
Mhm.
her. And she said, well, yeah, that is a white lady. Um, and so these representations of the lady arise in different ways. And as you correctly said there, from a Christian perspective, people would possibly see that as Mary, and
Mhm.
and that's okay for them to see that as Mary, and for other people they might see that as Mother Earth, or maybe the the spirit of the place, and so we're free to take whatever feels right for us as our perception of that. Um, for me at the time, I thought it was something to do with the place. I thought that she was like a spirit of the place.
Mhm.
Um, but it's very interesting to hear that as a little girl she had felt that, and that there was this church nearby. That's really great. And it would be if she wanted to come and talk to at any point, it'd be fabulous to speak to her. But I'm so glad that you had this proximity to somebody who was willing to talk about these experiences in a way that sounds like you were kind of aching for as a child, for your for you to ask your parents, what about this? What was that about? And I guess now that it's kind of gone out of their memory, it would be impossible to find out what happened that day. But I think the important thing is that it opened a door for you, and that there was somebody in your sphere, this woman, to be
Mm.
able to kind of follow that up for you. That's the important thing. So she's done a great service to you, and I'm sure the other kids in the class, by allowing exploration of that, you know,
Mm.
allowing the stories to be heard, as you said. That's really
Definitely, definitely, because I think I would be drawn to that either way because I always loved some storytelling, and so if that didn't happen to me, I would still just go around and listen to people's stories there and out of fun, but because I had something like that happen to me as well personally. It was more than this curiosity. It was something that, as I said, really a safe space. And I believe that she's one of the people who are at the right place at the right time with their job. Obviously, when she found her outer calling to maybe leave that behind and go fully into guiding people and doing other activities. Of course, that's perfectly great. But I really value that at that time and at the place she was there. So yeah, and also with that when you mentioned again the story with her as a child and with a female figure, I found it interesting that it had not only did it happen there, but that there was this chapel of Saint Mary right there built where she had this experience. So it would be interesting to know, well, was it there built for a reason or was it just a place by choice? Or
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
no, that's I mean, that's significant for sure.
yeah.
And it would be beautiful, wouldn't it, to find out, because if that place was a place that was known for the lady, then later religious beliefs, frameworks would, if you have people in an area that will look to that place as a sacred place of the lady. I mean, I don't know whether there may even be a well round there or
Mm,
something like that. But if that was somewhere that people used to go to, I guess, worship in their own way, or what's the word? To pay gratitude and honor to the landscape in that place as some kind of aspect of the lady,
mm,
then later on, that those are the places where people would want to build a church. So it might be worth um, finding out what else is in that area and whether there are any kind of sacred springs or wells or anything like that there. And equally, um, taking it from the other way around, if this place was, consecrated for Mary, and somebody's having these visions there or experiences
mm,
there or sensing presences there, then it could be Mary. It can be either way, really. So,
mm,
did it come from the church in the first place and the people and their belief, or did it come from the land itself and was just intuitively experienced by this little girl who then was able to actually go on, and help other children as Mary would, because
mm,
she's the mother, isn't she? And so so there's a lot of beauty in that, the way that she was able to then open and provide that role, be that role for other people. And now you're talking to me, and there might be, other people that will hear this that think about their own experiences, and it goes on
mm.
and it goes on, doesn't it? So it's yeah, she sounds like an amazing person, and I'm glad that you were able to
Yeah,
tell her so as well,
yeah,
to actually say, look, you really helped me, and I really appreciate that. So that's nice to know.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also, just for the description, when I said chapel, it's in this context, it was not really a church. So the chapel as if just a shrine, probably. So just a
Right.
small structure with where you would have just one smaller object on the whole church with a statue
Wow.
and like that. So
Wow.
just for that. But yeah, I really value that, and I'm really glad that we had her. I know that some people did not understand what she was doing. Of course, some kids were rather doing something else. But I think yeah, I think she was really good to be there, and she was really meant to be there for us.
Yeah, I feel like if it's a shrine too,
Yeah.
I think there was probably something older there. So that would be really cool to try and find out if you, I don't know how old the shrine is, might be a good place to start there. And then who knows what you'll find. But I feel like maybe you could update us on that one
Yeah.
because I'm keen to know. And so yes, you mentioned as well then you when you moved on, you had a completely different sort of experience later.
Yes, well, I had one experience myself, and one that was later on experienced by my ex-partner. But and both are great examples of a complete different sort of energy, completely different. Even when we were talking about the spirits and the deceased, a completely different story behind that. So when I was around 12, we moved to the place where we now live with my parents. And for 2 months or so, we had to go to some place, some kind of apartment for between completely being moved to this new place. And it was one of the older houses in near the city center. I believe it can be from around 1930s or so. So these kind of structures. So it was an apartment, I believe, on the first floor, and the lady that was the landlady that was renting it out to us uh, was introducing us to that place and told us, well, here you can find this, here you can find that, and by the way, there is, and I think I've written that as a dead link in
Right.
English, so or something like that. It's not a word in Slovak. She used a very own word for that, smrťák. So it was like
Hmm.
a dead man or dead link. There's dead link in the cellar. You know, it went completely out of nowhere when she was just discussing normal things,
Wow.
practical things around the house. We're like, okay, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, one of the former tenants there committed a suicide in the cellar. He hung himself there, and now he just happens to be there sometimes. And we completely dismissed it at the time because despite what I've told you about this experience, my parents, and including me, tended to rationalize
Mhm.
things a lot, and also she mentioned it, as I said, out of nowhere. It seemed a bit odd until we had this experience ourselves with this presence. Almost every single night, in the middle of the night, there was a huge noise from underneath us, where the cellar of the apartment block was. And the thing is, the walls there, even the walls to the hall, mm, and the doors were not that soundproof, so we could clearly hear when someone was opening the doors, going up or down the stairs. There was nothing like that at any of those times. It was just suddenly a noise in there. And once when I came back from school, I also remembered this kind of uh, shadowy silhouette, because there was the entrance to the house were glass doors,
Mhm.
and these glass doors were also on the other side of the house, so you could see through them. Um, and there was suddenly this sort of shadowy silhouette in the middle of these two glasses, so they were not completely see-through glass. It was I don't know how to describe that, but it was clearly visible that there was some sort of silhouette that just disappeared after I came a bit closer. So there was sort of experience, as I said, on a completely different level. So a very probably violent death experience by the man that could turn into that as well,
Yeah.
and a similar sort of principle was with another story that I've told you or that I've described in the email. Um, my family used to have own large plots of lands around the city in the 1920s, 1930s. So before the communism, and some parts of these lands were then restituted, given back to the family in the 90s after the revolution.
Mm.
And one of these plots of lands was this kind of large field by a lake that's near the city,
Oh yeah.
and that was given back to my great grandfather, one that I've mentioned a bit earlier in the interview.
Mm.
And he was offered some sum of money from a company that wanted to build a shopping mall in there, so a
Oh,
huge grocery store. Uh, I'm not going to say the brand, but it's the British one with the five words. So you probably can know which one I mean. They came to offer this sum of money and for the plot of land to build this shopping mall in there. So he was not thinking of now taking care of a huge plot of the field. So he accepted that offer, uh, and they began to dig up there and in order to begin the construction. And there was this law. I'm not 100% sure about how it goes, but when you find an archaeological artifact on the construction site, you're supposed to stop the construction
mm-mm.
and give some space and time for the archaeologists to do some survey. They did find something. In fact, they found what could have been one of the largest Celtic burial grounds from the Celtic times. So during the Celtic settlements here, there was this sort of it was called the Latane culture, Latene, which was here at this area as well, and the burial grounds were found in that area. And if they would dig up more, they would probably find much more in there.
Oh,
However, the company decided that they do not want to spend that much time on archaeological survey, and they didn't want to risk uh, the whole sort of project because of this. It was some time ago. Our democracy is still young, so probably could be some corruption involved in that case. And the archaeological survey only lasted for around 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks, which is
no.
definitely not sufficient for that. And only thing they did was they put some parts of those some of those artifacts and two shelves in the middle of the shopping mall with a to me it seemed very mocking with a mocking script. Well, the name of the store and archaeology or something in that sort,
Yeah.
or cares about archaeology, whatever. Um, that happened a couple of years afterwards, so 3 years, I believe, 3 or 4 years ago. As I said, my ex-partner used to work in one of the shops in the shopping mall, and he said that, well, things happen in there. So, for instance, there would be wares that would fall out of the shelves, and when they would look at it on camera, they saw that it did not fall off the shelf because of the weight, like that it was as if
Yeah.
it was yanked out of these shelves.
Yeah.
Also, several of his colleagues uh, said that they heard voices talking to them when they were alone in the shop. So, for instance, his colleague would be sorting out wares at the shelves, and then she would hear a female voice saying hello. She would say hello back because she expected it to be a customer. Finished that, looked there was nobody in there. They checked the cameras. nothing happened in there. Also, a lot of technical problems
Right.
happened there as well. And I couldn't help but really link it to that history that was of the land there. So some sort of violation of the place
Mm.
and of the space there.
How sad. And
Yeah,
I'm, really feel angry about it as
yeah,
well that that happened. Was that when your great grandfather was still alive? Did he know that
yeah.
that's what had happened?
Well, he was not alive when
Okay.
when these things were happening in the shop. He, as I said, he passed away around, well, when I was in the primary schools, I
Yeah.
think.
But he was
So,
aware that they were building and that they'd found artifacts and carried on building.
well, he couldn't do anything about it because
No.
he already sold that whole area to the company. So he didn't have anything to say in that sort. So it was only between
Mhm.
them and the archaeological institute. So
But it must have been horrible for him to hear that. And
yeah.
also, heartbreaking as well that that had been, I don't know how long that field had been in your family, how many generations that field had
Mm,
been in your family, but it's obviously, a link there. And then for something so incredible to be found in that spot, that's
mm,
just it's
yeah,
heartbreaking, isn't it? Did that
definitely.
did that have an effect on him?
Um, I do not remember anyone telling me that it would. I remember it concerned my grandfather a lot because he's very interested in history and so on,
Yeah.
and he was really angry about the whole thing happening. So yeah, obviously, because
Mm.
you know,
Well, I hope someday, you know, that right is, that's able to be put right in the
mm,
when that huge shopping center,
mm,
when that's able to be removed, that people can actually continue, finish the process and
mm,
um because you're right, usually it might have to be stopped for, I don't know, 6 months or something like that.
yeah,
But and also what can happen is that it's kind of covered up. So
mm,
that's such a shame, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
mm,
And I guess, yeah, that's that a burial ground that's been disturbed and sort of dishonored.
mm,
Um, so it's no surprise that things are taking place in the supermarket. Blimey.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So when you saw this being through when you were staying in the
mm,
house, just talking about,
mm.
and you saw this being, how did that right itself in the end? Did anybody do it? Did you just move or?
Well, we were there for a limited time, for the 2 months,
Uh,
so we sort of had to endure all the noise and everything in the nights. But we weren't physically threatened or anything by anything that would be happening there. But I have to say, my mom stressed out to me even a couple of times afterwards that she really had an extremely negative feeling about the whole space there, about the apartment. She was feeling really, really bad in there. She always had sort of a bad mood when she was returning back there from work and just spending time in there. Yeah, I think it was for some reason it was very, very emotionally hard for her. Nothing really bad was happening in the family or to her in her job. So it was only the place having very, very negative sort of um, vibrations or something. I don't know how to put it. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and at that point, then they accepted that this was a thing that the guy had, very sadly taken his own life, and that they were experiencing him. Did they accept that it was due to that, or were they reluctant
Mm,
to feel that that's what it was?
they never explicitly accepted it. They well, they admitted that these things were happening, and that lady told us that. But as I said, they're very, very rational people, and for them to just say, "Oh yes, that was connected to that," what happened to that? I believe that would be asking too much from them. But I'm not criticizing them for that. My dad still mentions it sometimes as a joke, in a very joking manner and joking way. Well, this sort of daddling was there, and I don't think they concern themselves about that
Mm.
anymore. I don't think it had such an impact on them. Neither it had on me. So it was very short time that we lived there, so it didn't leave any lasting impact.
Didn't impact too much. No. Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, where we live, it has a history, even if it's a new house, what was there before. And I know that we've experienced previous occupants in this house, not in a bad
Mm,
way. Although the man, he gets a bit involved when we do anything in the garden, so
mm,
we know when he's around. But the woman, and I don't know if these were husband and wife or whether these are from different times of occupation. But
mm,
it's a woman that kind of shows up in the bedroom sometimes when particularly if I'm there on my own, she kind of makes her
mm.
presence known. And it's not a negative thing. It just is,
Okay.
she obviously has still some tie to this place. Um, and it's just we just accept that there are other presences here that were here
Mm,
before us. But thankfully, it doesn't cause us any distress. It's actually just find it quite interesting when they turn up from time to time. But I wouldn't want to live in, somewhere like that. So thankfully you were able to move out, and I wonder who's living there now. Um, but well, thank you very much, Robert. It's been really interesting to hear about this. And that place that you were living, it sounds like a really rich, sort of potent area. And I imagine it probably some of these areas haven't changed a lot,
mm,
for hundreds of years if they've been left, in their natural state. So hopefully they'll continue to hold these presences in the land and not be disturbed. But if you find out any more from your mum, or you speak to this lady that you had at school, or indeed if you decide to have a look into the archives, please update us, because I know I'd really love to hear, what may arise from any of that. So yeah, be interesting to hear that.
I'll be glad to do that, to have a little update if I will have something new, in this area.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much then. And yeah, we'll speak again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you took some time for this discussion, and also brought some new ideas to me, on how to think about these things that happen to me, how to make some sense. So I appreciate it a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider joining us on Patreon for dozens more episodes of unreleased bonus content, monthly online events, and a private chat. We are a warm, supportive community, and it really helps to support the project. Find us on patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast.